The boss was really happy with the employee status widget you built. But since then, the entire development team has discovered the joys of jQuery. Your company has decided to switch over to jQuery for all of its AJAX work. So the boss is asking you to rewrite the employee status widget using jQuery. Remember, in the last stage, we built the widget using plain JavaScript. We wrote code to make the AJAX request and to get the JSON data from the server. We also used the web browser's built-in JSON parsing tools to extract the data into a usable JavaScript format. jQuery provides an AJAX helper function that not only performs the necessary AJAX requests, but also parses the returned JSON file. The method is called getJSON and works nearly identically to the get method we looked at in the previous video. I'll be showing off some jQuery-specific code, so don't forget to check out our jQuery videos listed in the teacher's notes if you need help learning jQuery. If you want to follow along, open the workspace on this video page. It has all the necessary files to complete this project. Open the index.html file. It's nearly identical to the file used in the pure JavaScript version of this project in the last stage. However, you'll see we have a link to the jQuery library, and we've already linked to the widget.js file. Just like in the last stage, I'm going to put all of the programming code for this widget into a separate file, widget.js, and link that to our web page. That way, I've got reusable code that I can include on any number of pages in the site. To start, I'll add the document.ready function to the file. This function is a jQuery thing. It waits for all the HTML in a file to load into the browser before running any of the JavaScript inside it. This is required only when you include your JavaScript in the head of your document, before HTML. Because you often use JavaScript to manipulate or change already existing HTML on the page, you'll run into JavaScript errors if you try to alter any HTML that hasn't already loaded. You'll notice I've added a JavaScript comment here at the end. I do this a lot when programming with jQuery. It helps me identify what these brace, parentheses, semicolon trio belongs to. When programming in jQuery, you run into these a lot, and it's helpful to know what code they belong to. Now let's add the getJSON function. It works nearly the same as the get function from the last video. You can pass it 3 arguments: a URL that points to a web resource like a static JSON file or a server-side program that returns JSON data, an optional data argument if you want to send information to the web server, and a callback function that runs when the browser successfully retrieves a response. I'll start by creating a variable to store the path to the JSON file. For this example, we're not sending any data, so I can delete the data argument. For the callback, I can either create a variable to store the function, like I did in the last video, or simply insert an anonymous function. As with the get function, the callback for the getJSON function is passed the response returned from the server. However, remember this function handles only JSON data. So before passing the response from the server to the callback, jQuery parses the response into a usable JavaScript array or object. This is important because if the server responds with anything but JSON, like plain text, HTML, or XML, the entire getJSON function fails. That means the callback doesn't run. You won't even get any errors in the JavaScript console. Now, let's program the callback. This is very similar to what we did in the last stage with plain JavaScript. I'll create a variable to hold the HTML that the callback generates. At this point, the callback has this response variable. Remember that the response is the employees.json file converted to JavaScript. So the response variable holds an array of objects. In the pure JavaScript solution to this project, we used a loop to iterate through each of the array elements. However, jQuery provides its own utility for looping through arrays. jQuery's $.each function is a really useful utility for looping through an array of items. It does the same thing as a JavaScript for loop, but using less code. Like the $.getJSON function, $.each is a general jQuery utility method. It takes 2 arguments. either an array or an object as the first argument, and a callback function as the second argument. You can use it either to step through each item in an array or to get a property and value of items in a literal JavaScript object. The callback function itself accepts two arguments, which are provided by the $.each method. The first argument is a number, the index value of the current array item. You can think of this like the value you use as a counter in a for loop. The second argument is the actual array element at that index. Let's see how this works. Say you have an array named data with 5 items in it. To use the $.each function, you pass it an array or an object. In this case, we're passing the array data. The callback function is then executed once for each item in the array. This is really just a loop. The callback function is passed the current index value and array item each time through the loop. So the first time through, the index is 0 and the value is A. The second time, index is 1 and the value is B, and so on, and so on, and so on. Let's look at how this will work with some of our JSON data. In this case, the first time through the loop, value holds the first object in the array, composed of 2 properties, name and in office, with values Amy and false. As the each function continues, it reaches the next item in the array. The index number is then 1, and the value is another object with 2 properties, name with the value of Amit, and in office with the value of false. Let's use the $.each method in our program to loop through the array of employees. Inside, we pass the data we receive from the AJAX callback and an anonymous function. I've named the second argument passed to the anonymous function employee, since that's basically what this is. Each of the array elements is an object containing information on one employee. Now the rest of the code is the same as the last project. We need to check the value of the in-office property and add classes to match whether the employee is in the office or not. Then we add the employee's name. If you're not clear on how this works, check out the video from the previous stage. It's linked in the teacher's notes. After the loop completes, we can close the UL tag. Make sure you place this outside of the $.each function, that is, outside the loop. If you don't, this closing UL tag will be added every time the loop runs, after every list item, and you'll end up with broken HTML. Finally, we add the completed HTML to the page. jQuery provides many useful functions for adding HTML to a page. In this case, we select the element we want to insert the new content into. That's what the $employee list does. There's a div in our HTML that has the ID employee list. Then we insert the HTML we created. Let's save this file and preview it. Perfect. As you can see, jQuery lives up to its motto, write less, do more, by simplifying many common JavaScript programming tasks, such as making AJAX requests, working with arrays, and updating HTML. In the next video, we'll look at how you can use jQuery to post form data to a server.